I was trying to really decide what the best way for me to develop myself was. And I had some friends at a CrossFit gym in Dallas. Shout out to CrossFit 214 for helping me learn a lot. Those guys are great. And went there to try to help them streamline their business, because at the point was really trying to grow and it was just literally inefficient. So I wanted to apply the business models I had learned through my experience into a new business.
Welcome to Barbell Business. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Doug Larson and Marcus Gurzy. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Connor Moore. And this show is going to be a little bit different because we're actually going to talk about what it's like to shut down your gym and what it's like to experience a level of failure. And I want to point out that Connor, I don't want to be offensive or to insult you or anything like that. No, but on paper, like, everything looked amazing leading up to that. You know? CrossFit Games, regional athlete, you were on a team, you were making really good money, close to six figures as a coach at a CrossFit gym before going on to do your own, and you're an accomplished coach at that. So I'm really excited to dig into, I think a lot of people build up a lot of confidence in the beginning, like, hey, experience some type of success in the industry and go, well, I'm going to open up my own gym, thinking it's going to be more of the same. And then it's not.
Wait, is this something that you actually view as a failure on the front end, or is this something you did and then you decided, hey, you know what, this isn't for me, I don't want to do it anymore, and you decided to shut it down?
So I consciously took a step out of it. I got in myself, we can go into the full story, but I had a really tough decision to make, and I consciously said, hey, I'm going to wash my hands of this thing, and here's an opportunity for me to take a step back, because by that point I'd already realized, like, this isn't where I want to go.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of people listening to this might be in a similar situation where they're like, hey, you know what, I've been doing this for a couple of years. It's not what I thought it would be, but they feel like they're stuck and they feel like they just don't know what to do. How do I get out? I don't want to sell. Maybe it's not ready to sell. Maybe if they did sell, they wouldn't really get anything, and they just want to be done with it. So that's why we're talking to you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about
man, and I really want to get into the decision-making process and kind of like the realization of, like, I'm actually going to do this now and pull the trigger, make the transition, and then really also the recovery coming out of that, because now in retrospect, I know we were talking over breakfast about how it's actually been a really big stepping stone and learning experience for you and your overall success, but that evolution and transition is something I really want to dig into.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to be a part of this and share the story, because I think one thing that we miss is the idea that we can grow from quote-unquote failure, and we attach the idea that something is a success or failure when it's really just another flow of experience that we can then leverage to create further experience down the road. So to kind of funnel your experience into what you understand might be selling yourself short of what you can potentially experience in the future.
Yeah.
So when you decided to open up your own gym, when you decided to open up your own box, you know, and we talk to a lot of people who want to open up their own box, and a lot of times we encourage them, hey, you know, you need to jump in, you just need to pull the trigger. You jumped into, you know, you left coaching in another gym to open up your own box, and you know, you had a lot of things going for you. What led you to come to that decision, and how did that start in the beginning? How did that feel in the beginning?
The decision to open my own gym?
Yeah.
So I came to that decision, actually I decided I wanted to open my own gym when I was 19. So I was in a gym working out, and I was starting to help other people because I had dove in and because that's my style, is I tried to learn as much as I could, and I was sharing that information. And I thought, man, maybe I should just do this for a living. So I was about 19 and ended up going to Texas State, getting a health and fitness management degree and doing that whole thing, and really stayed in that vein. I had the blinders on, like, I'm gonna do this thing. With that same intention, I kind of plowed through the coaches development side of CrossFit relatively quickly at like 22, before there was a lot of resources. So this is like 2010. From there, the idea to open my own gym really was pushed by the clients that I worked with. Like, I feel like they really genuinely want the best for you, and from the outside in their their thought was that I should own my own space and create my own space.
That's how a lot of people end up owning a gym is like, I'm a great coach. All my clients are like, man, you're great. You should have your own place.
Yeah.
Not necessarily realizing how different it's going to be.
Absolutely. There's so many different things that go into it. And I realized looking back now, as I made this transition, that what I really loved was connecting with people. Like my business was sets and reps and fitness, but I was really, if you go down to the why I was even doing it, was to connect with human beings and elevate their life experience in some way. The excuse was sets and reps. The excuse was CrossFit. I love CrossFit, I love fitness, but that wasn't the why behind any of it.
So how long were you actually in business from start to finish?
About 2 years, yeah.
So going into it, what was the business plan like? What was kind of the plan for that, let's say even first year period, and kind of like getting it off the ground?
So let's, we want to go a little bit further back. Like I had moved to Dallas and was working at a gym and working their business development to scale what they were doing. And I had an idea of how to go about, and this is like pre-Barbell business times, right? So we didn't have all the resources that you guys have now, but was able to provide a really great client experience. And that was my kind of focus, right? Like I said, I loved connecting with people, and that was something I just really focused on. So my client experience was my kind of focus with everything I did, and everything was kind of built out of that. I decided I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull the trigger and open my own gym when I was in Dallas, and then it became the year of like reality, right? So I had found a way to get I had gotten frustrated trying to make that, fit that square peg in a round hole when I could have just taken the blinders off and looked around and been taking a step back. I just didn't know how to do that at the time. So going in, I was like, all right, this thing, because I'm a good coach and I've gotten this feedback and had this pressure, like it's gonna fucking work out. But there's not an option that this thing is gonna be successful. Like I had this inevitability of success, kind of disguised as like the stubbornness. So going in, I knew that I had the chops as a coach. I knew I had the business understanding. Where I relied on those things so heavily that when I got myself into a bad lease situation, is what essentially happened, things got really, really messy. And it took away all of my emotional bandwidth was then invested into like dissolving a situation that I had gotten myself into by over-relying on business principles and my ability to connect with people and to provide a really high-end customer experience. With the business model, we were really close. We ended up opening up really close to a university, the University of Texas. So we had a pretty high price point. It was an unlimited model, which was a starting ground, and it was going from there into, we also had like a half of it was individual program design through OPEX at the time. Mm-hmm. So we had that was our two models. There was only two of us at the time that were working there. So it was kind of like, the intention was to grow into a more refined business model, it was like that was our entry level intention.
Got it. So you said it was a bad lease situation?
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about that.
So I think this happens a lot. I was really adamant about being in proper like Austin, like in downtown Austin is where I wanted to be, which I knew I was kind of fighting an uphill battle there. What I was really naive about was all the code and zoning issues that I was going to face going into that. I had this thing like, I'm opening a business, I'm doing it for the right reasons, I love what I do. I think that the city should give a shit, and they don't. So, but I'm trying real hard.
I had a really similar experience putting this place together.
It's just like, they're like, no, dude, that's not how it works. Like, you got to build out these bathrooms, and all these different things that were like, you have to have handicap bathrooms, and I'm like, but no one that's handicapped works out here right now. Yeah, things like that. It was just really silly, but at the same time, I completely understand. So, I didn't ask the right questions going in, and there's not. The people that leased me the place, the company that leased me the place was just doing what that company does. Like it wasn't personal. They withheld information. I was actually fraudulently induced into the lease and spent the next year and a half trying to get out of it. Like trying to figure out a way that I can like make it work. I really had the best of intentions of trying to make it work. But I just didn't ask the right questions or really seek out advice from the outside because I was so convinced that this was gonna happen. Like I needed to make this happen. I felt incomplete that this thing didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot of times when people want something so bad, like they're attached to this outcome so bad that anytime advice that's counter to that's gonna, if that's true, it's gonna make this thing much more difficult. You know what? I'm not gonna really pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's a form of self-sabotage, really.
Yeah.
Like you're purposefully staying naive because you don't want to be told that you're wrong or that you could probably go a different direction.
Yeah, I've seen that with business owners quite a bit. People are launching a business. They make deals that, like, if you've been in business for a decade, and then I've had people do this. They come to me, they go, oh, this is what's going on. I was like, you actually need to have a conversation with that person. The deal that you guys, the partnership you've worked out, the lease you worked out, whatever it is, that is terrible. You have to go talk to that person and see if you guys can get this changed. And 9 times out of 10, I check in with them a month later and I'm like, did you go talk to them? They're like, no, it's going to be fine. Like,
Yeah.
You can't just make it fine by ignoring it. It's not going to work.
Until it's not fine.
There's some things in life you can manifest into reality, and that's not one of them.
Yeah, it's like you're willing to do anything to get it off the ground because you think your why is big enough and like, I'm going to make this difference, I'm going to build this great business, and you're just willing to overlook or just like, oh, that's fine, it'll work itself out, or I'll sort it out later. And really, that's not how business really works. So that shit comes right back up when it matters, and it hits you in the face. So my question is, did you have any like mentors or like friends who were in the business who were like, that's fucking terrible, watch out?
Like, not really, no, which is funny. They were there. They were there, but I didn't seek them out. Like as if it was their spots, like as if they should read my mind and what I'm going through and come and find me, you know, and let me know what's up. Like Mike and I were close at the time, and Doug as well. Like if it was, you know, we had talked a lot, and it was like all I had to do was I could have shot the lease over, and you guys would have had somebody look at it. No problem. Yeah. I just didn't do it. I didn't want to inconvenience you. I thought I had it, and that was my own ego being like, I've got this. Like nothing can stand in my way. I will plow through whatever I need to make this thing work. Which I did. I plowed through myself and it didn't work.
And there were some things we discussed. You know, we did hop on the phone. I gave you some advice around the things that you asked about.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that advice worked out specifically, but
coming back, I didn't ask the right questions. You know, and that's something I find the most value in now when it comes to business or just personal life is find a way to ask better questions.
I think a level of that, like you were talking about before with ego, is the willingness to be vulnerable. So I found this with myself when I first hired my first business coach. I say it took me the first 6 months to realize that I wasn't even revealing everything that I should have been revealing to him because I was embarrassed about things that were going on in the business. I was like, oh, I'm not going to reveal that. I'm only going to talk about the highlights. Of course, he knew. And is digging it out anyway. And then after a while I go, why the hell would I have a business coach if I'm not gonna practice a level of vulnerability where they're actually gonna be able to help me? And so a lot of times that is what's happening. There's things that I would love to talk about. Someone wants to sit down and talk about a piece of the business that's going really well? Easy, so easy. But the moment someone starts going, oh, what about this thing over here, the thing that you don't pay any attention to? I'm like, I think it's getting taken care of by so-and-so. Yeah.
Got on lock.
Yeah. Somebody on the company has it, you know, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And then even like what you alluded to earlier, like there was a high likelihood of success. Like it made sense. I had the following, and honestly, while the gym was open, the members of the gym had a great time. Like what I actually focused on, and we've spoken about this before, that your business is really a manifestation of yourself, especially when you're the one. I mean, it came down to just me running this thing on my own. And with that being said, like I can look at the gym and say, wow, that was a reflection of me at that time. You know, and the business that I do now is a reflection of me at this time, and that will continue to evolve. And I have no attachment to like that; it'll stay the same or change. And that was the big takeaway from that. You know, but if you can, the skill of looking into yourself, you'll find some things that will probably reflect into your business as well. And that was something, because I mean, like I said, the people that were there were getting a stellar customer experience and having a great time. But behind the scenes, like I'm like pulling my hair out trying to deal with something that like is just not going to get resolved because there was so much going on outside of that. But one thing I do take a lot of pride in was the fact that throughout all of it, I brought the best version of myself to my classes and my clients every time.
Yeah. Aside from the lease, what were some other things that were challenging for you?
Yeah, so my business partner, as you know, JC, her father.
It's all her fault.
Yeah, no.
I thought you just said you did it all by yourself.
Well, this is what happened. So this is early on. JC was my partner going in. Her father was diagnosed with ALS, like right as the gym started, and we had a conversation. She had to go. She had to go live there for about 8 months. So that was the beginning of the gym, and she helped out as much as she could remotely, but emotionally she was just super invested. Nothing you can do about that. Like it wasn't even a question in my mind. I'm like, this is your family. I've got this. Like, just help me as much as you can, and we'll go from there. Yeah. Still, like, love her to death. But I wouldn't change that decision for the world. Totally. Yeah. So it was me alone at that point, and I had partnerships with like the student organization. So I had some guys around that were really great that would jump in some classes. But really, it was me like coaching all the time, which wasn't the plan either. Like I was trying to create an environment for great coaches to come and be a part of it. But on the back end, I had this overbearing lease situation that was kind of plaguing me that kind of didn't even let me develop the business in a way. Yeah.
And then location-wise, like we talked about the lease, but the actual location, that was a less than ideal location. How did you end up in that spot?
So on the map, it's just like on paper, everything on paper made sense, right? The location on the map, and I wasn't super familiar with that area of town, was great. Like a lot of high income area, a lot of students, a lot of young people that were like, I thought that we could attract those people in. A lot of like, when I say like students, you think that they don't make a lot of money, but it was like the students whose parents will like throw down, like they're paying $10,000 a year to be in a fraternity type kids, right? And that we had a handful of those guys come through, but the building we were in just had such a terrible reputation that I had no idea about until I was already like signed and in, you know. Did
you visit it before you signed and all that? Like what was the process leading up to actually signing the paperwork?
I mean, there's a lot of touring and ideas and like kind of blow smoke up your ass is what we're gonna do and this is how it's gonna be and we're doing this and for whatever reason I believed a broker, which is a terrible idea.
Yeah,
Lesson number one.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
That actually is a really good lesson.
No, it is.
Because
like,
my experiences with brokers, like when you get into higher end areas, my experience with brokers is they're either blowing smoke up your ass or they don't know.
they don't know. They just make shit
They're
up.
just not good. A lot of them aren't that good at their job. Like I've had that experience.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, why is this happening like this? And you get talking to the broker, I'm like, oh, he just doesn't know how to do his job.
Yeah, it's fine. And like even.
But you still that's who you're dealing with.
Yeah, and you're in there. So it's like there was things that were told to me on the front end that were just not true. Like it's like, oh, you guys have a water line underneath your gym. Cool. Okay, there's the water line under my gym. No, there's not. There's not one. That cost me $40,000 on the front, which is like that wasn't supposed to be the case.
So we're talking about a lease situation here, but there's always something. It may not be a lease. It may be something else in your business
Exactly.
that just blindsides you. I mean, that's something that's common. These are conversations that happen when I hang out with other entrepreneurs. It's like, oh, so what thing bit you in the ass?
Yeah.
And they tell me, I'm like, wow, I would have never saw that either. Like,
Yeah.
that was something I would have missed. And we might be sitting at a table, and there might be 8 of us, and we're like, oh wow, that's shocking.
Exactly.
But everyone's got that story of the thing that they didn't see coming, and nobody would ever see it coming. So to think that you're gonna, I have this plan, and all we have to do is execute this plan, it's gonna work out just fine. No, something will happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the things. It's like building a house where they're like, okay, you said you wanted to build a house. It's going to cost you $200,000. Budget 50% more, or budget double. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you can do this, this, and this. You look at it on paper. You're like, it's going to work out great. But you don't know what's actually under the hood when you open up the foundation or whatever it is. Same thing applies in business. If you don't have like wiggle room, there's a really good chance you're going to get caught with your pants down like right in the beginning, and it is going to screw up your trajectory right out of the gate. Happened to me numerous times in numerous businesses, even with this place. Same thing with the city, where they're like, okay, it's everything, this, and this is all taken care of with the conditional use permits and like handicapped access and all that. And they're like, yeah, you're set up. We get in here and we want to get the guy from the city to come and approve everything and give us our use permit. And he's just like, oh, no, man. He's like, you guys got to build a ramp in the parking lot. That's going to cost you $15,000. Those signs over there across the parking lot, those aren't up to code. And I'm like, that's my problem. They're like, you're the one applying for the permit. We've had to pay out the ass left and right for all sorts of different things that we never saw coming. And that was like an additional about like $20,000 that because we ended up negotiating and working something out with the other tenants, but like, wow, that was $20,000 I was planning on spending on marketing that I did not have. Exactly. So we had to start off way more grassroots than I was planning on it, because I was planning on coming out of the gate swinging. My first few months were a lot harder than I wanted them to be.
Exactly, and that's what happened. It put me in a situation where I had planned, I have X amount of money, here's how much I'm spending on this build out, and that ended up eating an extra 20 G's. That was exactly the same deal. Well, that money was going to go into paying coaches on the front end to really push hard. I had people like lined up for that. So on top of the fact that completely blindsided me, I had to then go deliver that news to people who were going to come work for me. Right. They had like put faith in me, which is a really difficult situation to be in. And then once you do that, like your reputation in the community starts to slip. Especially we had a really tight community that I'd been in for 5 years, 6 years at the time. And relatively well known in that area as a competitor and a coach. Yep. So that was a really profound shift.
So what did you do well? So we talked a little bit about. I mean, you from what I heard, you're delivering a great customer experience. People come to the gym, they're getting what they paid for and all that, and they're getting high-level coaching for sure. But what other things did you do well when you opened the business? And did you have clientele right at the beginning? Where did you sell memberships beforehand?
We sold a few memberships beforehand. Mostly it was just kind of riding on the kind of traction that I had in town. We had about 20 members to start out, which I felt was a pretty solid group. And we did a lot of introductory stuff and seeded it well. We actually marketed it well. Like this is what Doug was kind of alluding to earlier with the location. Like everyone knew it was there. Like if you asked anyone around, Like they knew it was there. It was just getting people into that area of town. Like it didn't account for the fact that traffic was a huge problem there, which is not in Austin. Like you don't want to go down there during the school year. The parking situation was less than ideal in the parking garage. Like it was poorly managed. People would get stuck in there and couldn't get out. Like things like that were happening all the time. So like you have some people come in for a first time workout and in one of our community workouts, which we were marketed well and that people would show up for, but they would have a bad experience with things that were just 100% out of my control. You know, and of course I go like jump someone's ass in the garage, like what's that gonna do? Like some guy who's getting paid $6 an hour is gonna like not like me from now on. Like he's not gonna change what he's doing, you know? So it's like, it was these things that were just like, it was the best practice in trying to like understand that I'm literally doing the best I can and I'm not the director of results. All I can do is be the director of the effort that I put into it.
Yeah.
So what was kind of the final straw, like specifically, like what was the moment when you were like, I think I have to shut this down?
So I had that feeling and I was like, all right, we're probably gonna have to move, something's gonna have to happen. I'm in this 3-year lease that I've got to, you know, I'm a year and a half in. Well, the building gets sold. The building that I'm in, and it's a high rise, so there's a student living facility. It's the only one that's on UT campus, or University of Texas campus, that's not owned by University of Texas. So, but there's like a retail area in the bottom, similar to what we're standing in now, that was kind of underground, and that's where we were at. They sold the whole building. Now, in the fashion of the company that owned the building before, they misled the company that bought it on what the leases were worth and how they were structured. So I have a conversation with them as they move in. I said, okay, well here's my copy of the lease. Here's the situation. Here's where they haven't held up their end of the bargain. All these different things. I kind of lay it out for them. And through a few meetings, they're like, okay, well we can just dissolve this thing. We'll give you the option to just dissolve it. And I was like, okay. Took a step back. And it's funny because through all of this, I found it's a lot of self-work and self-growth. And I started to see it more as like, this is an opportunity for me to move on. Like this has been like a punch in the throat over and over again. And no matter how much I love this, like I started to understand that what I loved wasn't CrossFit, it was interacting with human beings, and that CrossFit was like my entry level into helping people design better lives for themselves. So I knew I was gonna lose money. I knew it was gonna be hard. I knew I was gonna have to face like the fear of failure and the feeling of failure like rising up. But I had done the work on myself to be in a place where I felt like I could handle that. So from there, we made the deal and dissolved the lease. I was out January 1st. I ended up selling all my equipment and living off that money for a few months and just trying to figure like sorting it out, and had faith in that something would come around. But it was we can talk more about that kind of transition, but there were so many things that just lined up where it felt like the right thing to do, even though it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Connor, I want to dig into more exactly how you shut it down and that process, because I think you did it well in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of people are going to have questions about how do you actually go through the process of shutting down a business and what you're up to next. But let's take a break first.
Cool.
My name is Scott Picucci. I'm the owner of the recently opened CrossFit Des Plaines. I actually had the pleasure of working with Angelo Cisco and taking on this venture of opening up my own gym. So I mainly worked with other coaches and did the scheduling, programming the workouts of the day, taking on all of the fitness-related responsibilities of the gym, but not really too involved with any of the business side of things. So in doing so, I kind of had this passion and this drive, and I had this idea that I wanted to give the athletes more. And in order to kind of implement my vision, I decided that I wanted to open up my own CrossFit gym. I had the vision of what I wanted to create. I had this drive to implement these ideas that I had, but I didn't really have any direction. I didn't really have a path on how to get me there. I started thinking about like a 5-year plan and where I wanted to be in 5 years. I knew where I wanted to be, but I didn't really know how to get there. So that's kind of when I decided to team up with Angelo and take on his help as a business coach to help me get to where I wanted to be. In working with Angelo, he really was an instrumental part of helping me to get where I am now and creating this place. And he gave me the knowledge, he gave me the guidance, and he helped me learn how to actually implement my vision and to create the gym and the community that I wanted. He was able to help take me from that place where I was a coach with a vision to actually fulfilling my dream and opening up my own gym. And now I have this 5,000 square foot facility that I'm able to host and workouts and foster this community and start to build and continue to build upon this community that I wish to create. Originally, with Angela's help, I was able to open up a gym, starting off, opening up the doors on day one with over 50 members. And we're continuing growing at a great rate, great pace. After only 2 weeks in, we're already over 65 members. Anyone who's looking to open up their own gym or even just to take their business to that next level, and hiring or getting with a business coach, just like somebody that has the tools and knowledge like Angelo Cisco has, and really helping you take your business to the next level.
And we're back with Connor Moore. And first of all, I want to find out, what was it like at the peak of your coaching career? Right? Because you were actually doing really, really well. So how were you doing as a coach when you decided to open a gym?
Yeah, so when I decided to make the move to open a gym, everything was going really well. Like, just to give you some context on my style of learning and how to coach and how to develop, like I said, there wasn't a lot of, outside of the CrossFit seminars that were available, like CrossFit weightlifting, CrossFit kettlebell, and I did all of those, of course, and I was lucky enough to, I made sure I worked at a gym where I got those comped, so that was efficiency, that was great. But I dove into that as much as I could and just was always trying to learn. Like I learned how to learn. That's one thing I do credit CrossFit for, is I learned how to learn through that experience. I actually would watch Kelly Starrett's mobility WOD videos with the sound turned off, because I was really impressed with the way that he could make complex ideas simple through his body language and his mannerisms. So I would watch the video 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, through with the sound on, and then go back and watch it with the sound off. Like shit like that was, like that's what I would do hanging out in the gym in the middle of the day, because I wanted to save gas money and not go home. So that's like where it all started, and through that was able to, that was recognized. So my coaching career started to kind of speed up when I was approached by CrossFit Central and a few other gyms at the same time. So after that, I knew I wanted to make a move. I felt, since our community was so tight, that it would be the best thing to do for me to leave the gym I was at, that I started at, without a job offer, because I knew I could hang out for a month, and I knew that they were there. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to burn any bridges between other organizations. I wanted to have more respect for them than that. So I moved to CrossFit Central, and that's when things really started to take off, because that's somewhere where they had the top end capacity to have a coach like me on board and develop them. So that was really, really fun. Like, their coaches development program was very robust at the time. Like I said, that was 2010, 2011. So this is like before a lot of gyms had a solid coaches development program. Like, I was coaching what we called Elements, which was like our intake, like 6 times a day. So, I mean,
That's the most valuable class.
It was, yeah, for the first 3 months especially. I mean, I was like dip shrug for hours, you know. Med ball cleans for days, like knees out, you know, chest up. Like, it was like you learned to cue well, and then you learned how to communicate with people that were, you know, huge-eyed walking in the gym, and that was so valuable, because up to that point I hadn't had very much experience with like very raw beginners, and coming in as kind of a class A like meathead, like I haven't even experienced these like mouth breathers in a while, so it was like nice for me to come back and I was like, oh man, these like real people. But then I started to realize, well, the funny thing for mouth breathers, yeah, so,
go from mouth breather to real people.
So there's no saving that one. There's no saving that. Just let it crash and burn.
It's done. But no, and what's fun, come around to that was like, it was the first time I had really met somebody that was just coming into the gym for the first time, and I started to become extremely passionate about it, like giving those people the attention they deserved. And I started learning more about how I was presenting myself, and more taking a look outside of myself and what people expected when they saw me and came into my class, which was I played this like big loud bro character, but I would use that in a way to make people were comfortable if you don't threaten what they believe when they walk in the gym. Right, so they would come in and expect me to be a big bro, so I'd be a big bro and talk about whatever and busting weights and maybe make some dick jokes while I'm up there, and it was really fun and engaging with everybody. But when it came down to like, there was a moment of vulnerability with my clients, I would use that and take that very seriously through an empathetic like connection, and I try to add value there. And that's why I was able to have a really high retention rate. And it wasn't about retention, it was about connection. Retention was just the side effect, right? of really truly valuing connection, even though at 23 or 24, however old I was, like I didn't really fully understand what I was doing, but I knew it was working, and I was really excited about it. So that was kind of where my coaching career peaked out, and things were going really well. Just full disclosure, I was going to base out at like 67, 68,000 just on classes alone, coaching about 20 hours a week. And then I also did personal training with small groups mostly. I didn't do as much one-on-one, so small group training, and that would have probably brought in another like 20, 30,000. So I was getting really close to like $100,000 like pre-tax as a CrossFit coach at 25, or coming into my 25th year. But at the time, I wasn't hurting for money. I lived on very little. I just was just loving my life. I was in the gym all the time, so I spent money on the first Reebok Nanos that came out and shit like that. I wasn't that worried about it. So I had an opportunity to go. I was trying to really decide what the best way for me to develop myself was, and I had some friends at a CrossFit gym in Dallas. Shout out to CrossFit 214 for helping me learn a lot. Those guys are great. And went there to try to help them streamline their business, because at the point it was really trying to grow and it was just literally inefficient. So I wanted to apply the business models I had learned through my experience into a new business. And at CrossFit Central we had a business development course that I got to sit into for free and did every time that I could. So that was just my style of being, and trying to reflect on that. Went to CrossFit 214, continued to do what I was doing, implemented some programs, helped them implement some efficiency in the business. But by that point, I was ready to roll, right? And that was kind of how it went. And that turned into what turned into Ludo CrossFit. May it rest in peace.
Wow, man. So it's kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning of the show. You came into this thing pretty hot. You had good experience. You'd come from a great gym. Central had a great coaches development program. You learned about business. You got to go apply it to another business, actually see it work. You've got everyone telling you should do this on your own, and probably, hey, we'll support you, and how can we help? And it's like, man, I can't lose. You transition, you get this thing off the ground. You don't know what you don't know about leases and doing your due diligence and all that sort of thing. You're delivering to your clients, you're marketing well, you're selling memberships, everything looks totally awesome.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this whole lease thing really turns you inside out.
Yeah.
You realize, shit, I've got to turn this, I've got to shut this thing down, right? This is my opportunity to kind of move on to the next chapter. And so you do. And 3, 2, 1, go. And
what, bro?
So you make the transition, and now here you are, and it's like, I guess, what would you say to someone who is either in a position to where they may be thinking about oh shit, I might be having to shut down, or I don't know if I should or should not. I mean, I guess, what would you say to someone who has gone through all the work and building it up? They're great trainers, they're similar story to you, because I hear this a lot. But the business on the back end, there's a bogey back there that they either don't know about yet, or that they're just becoming aware of, and they're like, oh shit, this is a problem. Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you say to someone in that position?
Well, I think one thing that you really need to understand, that a lot of people need to understand, is you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. I love that quote. So understand that when you're in that position and you're in it, you're in it. And it's going to be really hard for you to see what's the actuality of what that experience is. Oh, what's up, guy? So, like I said, you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. That's kind of a mantra I like to live by. When I know I'm in a situation and that I may not be the best person to be objective about that situation because I'm so deep. I've been doing this, I'm obviously, and that's one thing that CrossFit does well, is have a really strong emotional connection with its coaches and with its members. So when you're in that place and you're starting to think, if you have the idea oh, this is what I wanted and I'm chasing this, and I've been chasing the owning a gym or chasing this business, and you get to where you kind of have it, and you realize that you have this feeling is this it? I don't feel any more complete, I don't feel any more full than I did beforehand.
Yep.
Maybe I thought it was going to be this, and my expectations led me to be disappointed. It's time to really reflect on why you did it in the first place. That's the biggest thing, is try to really dive into why. Create a little bit of space. Maybe that means making the hard decision and just getting away from the gym for a minute if you have the ability to do that. And if you don't think you have the ability to do that, that might be a problem as well, right?
Yeah,
and try and look at it from the outside. Open yourself up to outside perspectives, right? Don't let your ego's identity be threatened by outside perspective, because everybody has something to say. And they may not be right, quote unquote right, and they may not be wrong, but that may give you some context and help you have some kind of framework for what your business actually looks like from the outside. And then how you honestly, truly feel about it is super important. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, Mike, I know that's what you did, right? That was a huge turning point for you in your career with your gym, was when you took that first week. I think you went to Hawaii and like hung out and like got your thoughts clear.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, Doug got involved and the entire business evolved.
Yeah.
Right? Where you probably very well could have ended up shutting down if you wouldn't have had that.
Oh yeah, I had.
You know, that revelation.
I was definitely in a headspace at the time that what I was doing was special, and of course it would succeed. And I was operating that way for a full year, and then I did take off to Hawaii for a week. And I came back and I realized that what I'm doing is not special, and that their success is not guaranteed because I'm doing something that just happens to be slightly different than what other people are doing. And once I had that realization, I go, oh, we actually have to start practicing the universal business principles. Every other business in the world has to adhere to these principles, and for some reason I thought because we were the first CrossFit gym in Memphis, Tennessee, that we were going to get away with stuff. And we did. We got away with a lot of stuff until we didn't. And so,
that's the worst, right? That's just like training, right?
Exactly.
If you're resilient and you have good circumstances within your body, you'll get away with things until you don't. Like I learned about that in my own body.
Yeah, because people talk shit all the time. They're like, oh, you keep doing this snatch like that, you're gonna hurt your back. And they're like, man, I never hurt my back.
Yeah.
And then like 2 months later, they're like, fuck, I pinched a nerve, I got a bulging disc, and it's like, well, and it's like, fuck, I was told. And I just wasn't listening because, I mean, it's a black swan event.
So,
just because it never happened before doesn't mean people, for some reason, this is how we operate as human beings, is because it never happened to us before, we don't think it's going to happen to us in the future.
Exactly.
So it's the same reason most 25-year-olds don't think they're ever going to die, because they didn't die yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. True. So quick question, like you have a full gym, you have a bunch of members, you want to shut down, what do you do with those people? How do you break the news to them? Where do they go? What's that process like?
So that's if you want to let's just speak specifically to shutting the gym down, because if you want to exit, like there's different strategies for that. I think that's something that you may be able to speak on better because you didn't shut your gym down. So what I did is we had a really tight community, and I'd been a part of the community for a long time, and I also knew all my members really well. Like I love those guys. Like I said, I provided a lot of service to them, and I was always there. So what I did was thought about the 3 best gyms in town, relative to where everyone kind of lived and what they like to do and what kind of scratched that itch for them, like is what kind of training they liked. And then I tried to align them and give them the best recommendation to those gyms that I thought they would have the most success at, because that was really important to me. Now on my end, I knew I needed a little bit of money. So, and I wanted to know, I knew that the value I had to add to those other gyms, and that my members were fucking awesome. Like my members were great, and like you're lucky to have my members. So, like if they come over here and resonate with you, like you're welcome.
Yeah.
That they're fucking awesome, right? So I had meetings with these owners individually and worked out individual deals to where I would get a percentage of the memberships for a certain amount of time for the members that I sent over. And that was nice. It wasn't a ton of money, but it was something that where it made them kind of feel the value of those members. And the members, and it wasn't about the money because all the deals were different. It was like I knew that my members were somewhere where that meant where they would fit.
Yep.
And that was really important to me.
Continue their journey.
Exactly. I didn't want them to end up in that state of flux where they had to have kind of decision paralysis over all the gyms in town, where it's like, listen, I know the best gyms here. You know, if this isn't going to be here for you, I want you to be in the best place for you to continue what you're doing.
So was this like a formal announcement? Like you gathered everybody together like town hall style? Was this an email with like the announcement and the actual like this is what's happening?
I did it like throughout the classes for a week. We just talked about it, and it was very transparent. Like here's what's going on, here's why, here's what's been going on that you guys never see. And what really made me happy in all of it was that people couldn't really tell that all that was going on in the background. Like it didn't seem like that was going on, that I was in that place. So that I was happy that I was able to bring the best version of myself forward, like I had said earlier, to my classes, and that was really validating on my end. But yeah, I just talked to the classes, and there was a nice email, and there was a lot of also personal reach outs to people who were there early and that had been a part of it the whole time, and that may have known, like a few members knew kind of what we were going through. So there was a lot of personal connection with them, like, hey, just voicing my appreciation, because I knew I wasn't going to see them 5 times a week anymore.
Right.
You know, I would see them every now and then, we'd go have a beer and stuff, but it wasn't like that was us. You know, they would hang out with me on Saturdays after open gym and in my training time and just hang out, you know, and those people, like I knew I think that was really hard to let go. I knew that they were going to be all right, you know.
Yeah, so if someone finds himself in a similar situation to where you find yourself in, they're a good coach, they're making decent money, and they're thinking like, I should do this on my own. And all their clients are like, you should open your own place. Like, is there any other considerations that you haven't mentioned yet that person should consider before they open their own place?
I mean, talking to someone that owns or has opened their own place, that's succeeded, someone that's failed, someone that's in the middle of it, that really aren't attached to your success or failure. And that's super important, right? Like if I talk to Mike or Doug and Marcus, if I talk to you guys about what I'm doing, like you guys want me to be successful. So you guys are gonna talk to me as if you want me to be successful. If I talk to someone if I sit down and have coffee with someone who really doesn't give a shit whether I succeed or fail and just lay out the information, and even if I pay them for their time, they don't really care. They're getting their payment for that hour no matter what, and they're gonna give you some badass feedback because they're not attached to your success or failure. Their emotions aren't tied up in it. I think that's huge, because if you go talk to your gym owner and you are coaching his classes, or his or her classes, and he thinks you might take your members, well, of course he's going to discourage you from opening the gym, right? He's emotionally connected to that. So really finding some people that are truly objective to have that conversation, and maybe they're even outside of the fitness industry. Like, don't limit yourself off to that, but be open to making a few moves and even maybe invest a little bit of money and a little bit of time into creating some true objectivity around your decisions. And then, honestly, what's probably going to happen is you're going to get asked questions that you should be able to answer that you've never asked yourself and no one else has ever asked you. Yeah. And you should have to fucking answer those questions. Those are serious and those matter.
Did you ever work with a business coach at any point in this journey?
Not officially, no. Which is a huge, and in my business now, that's the next logical move. It's like, that's the move to make whenever probably right before that's financially viable, like it's going to happen. That makes sense. Like I see so much value in that now. That's why that's immediately where I go with that.
Yeah, because that can often act as that neutral third party. I mean, your coach obviously wants to see you succeed, but a professional can sit down with you and say, look, objectively, this is what I'm seeing, and here's what this stuff means. My job is to help get you all the information to make the best decisions possible.
And if you're paying them to ask you the hard questions, right, that's more I would have met. Like, and I say somebody that's kind of disconnected, like obviously people want you to see you succeed, but yeah, the business coaching piece of it is huge. If you can find somebody who's very skilled in asking the right questions, there you go. That's huge. Yeah.
I find a lot of times people don't. I've worked with clients where they admitted later on that they didn't hire a coach because they pointed towards the money, but they didn't hire the coach because they were afraid of being asked the questions they didn't want to answer. So is that why you're holding off?
No.
Hold out.
Yeah, call me out. No. I'm actually, so if you're going to call me out, I'm in San Diego, in Encinitas, and I've been in Venice to seal up a lot of these things. I'm 3 months into my new business now, so it's kind of like, those are, thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so what are you up to now?
So yeah, man, so right now the most outward thing that I'm doing is the Pleasure Monkey podcast. So I was with On It for a year after closing the gym. I took some time to myself. I really took all the money I used from selling my equipment. I was like, okay, I've got about 3 months if I only eat like chicken and avocado and rice.
And Doritos.
And then of course the only splurge I really had was like bougie coffees. I definitely like my nice coffee shops, but you know, what can you do? I live in Austin, Texas, right? And I lived right on the Greenbelt. So it was funny, man. I had a trip in that 3 months after the gym closed. I had a little bit of money, but enough just to get by. And I wanted to stretch it out as long as I could because my decision after that personally was, I'm gonna find a way to be as happy and as fulfilled as I've ever been in my entire life with the least I've ever had. And I spent a lot of time in the woods. Spent a lot of time trying some different kind of psychedelics and really reflecting on myself and creating true objectivity on myself. Spent a lot of time with my dog, which I say is like a little Buddha, like a little furry Buddha. He's like a base level for happiness is his existence. Like if I could just get like 30% as happy as him through my life, like I'm having a great time. And from there, I started writing. Was picked up as the project manager for Aubrey Marcus at On It. So I was there for a year, doing content generation, marketing, and had a blast there. Through that, started doing some more podcast work. Launched the Pleasure Monkey podcast, and now that's my thing full time. So Pleasure Monkey podcast and my what I call lifestyle design program, which has just launched and has been going awesome. So basically taking people through and helping them identify what they actually give a fuck about in their experience and investing their time and energy into that. And it's been great, man. It's been super fun. The podcast is great because I have an excuse to talk to awesome people all the time.
Yeah, it's awesome how you're able to take that experience and what may have felt like the world is ending as it's happening, shutting down the business, having to have all these conversations, with your members and with everyone you were doing business with, and then taking that and turning that into now your next business, where you actually, because of the self-discovery afterwards, were able to learn all this shit about yourself and how to actually make the most of your life, your experience, and show other people how to do that.
Well, and the why is the same, man. And if you're in this place, like the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. You guys like books.
Yep.
But that book changed my life. And like the why behind what I'm doing now is exactly the same. I have a little bit more structure around it. I've realized it and embodied it more. But the how and what are just changed.
Yeah.
But so I feel like everything I've taken, like I just changed the lane a little bit. But all the tools I learned coaching and through that business, like they've developed me who I am now, and it's going to continue to develop and continue to evolve. And it's been great, man. I love the outlook that experience gave me.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. I really like the motto or the mantra that you have. You can't read the label if you're inside the bottle.
Yeah, you can't read. That actually came from Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler's book, Stealing Fire.
Oh, I missed that part.
You can't read the label if you're inside the bottle.
Yeah. So that was my big takeaway.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start using that.
That's good. It's good, man. Especially when you're super tangled up and like bound up like that. Like, oh yeah, shit, man, I'm in the bottle right now. I can't read the label. I need to get some help. And it's so much easier when you have something to call on like that. Little mantras. I love that expression of those little mantras that you can hold on to.
Well, and playing off that a little bit, what you said around having someone who's not invested in your success and they're this objective third party who ideally has some experience in the entrepreneurial world or maybe even in the fitness space, but they don't really know you, and they're going to give you like the real deal. They're going to look at your situation objectively from outside the bottle, because like if you talk to us, we might be not as in the bottle as you are, but we might be in the bottle with you at least a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're not as objective because we're like, oh, Connor can do it. Like even, that's not ideal, but you can do it anyway.
You'll figure it out.
I want to pump you up. So having that third party to objectively look at your situation and feed you some real shit, I think is really valuable. It's great.
Man, thank you for sharing the story, because this, I think, for a lot of our listeners is a conversation they've probably had with themselves at one point or another. And being able to kind of see behind the curtain of what it's like to actually go through the full evolution of we're kicking ass, we're doing awesome, to oh shit, I might have to shut down, and then actually taking that experience, turning it into something positive, man. Thank you for sharing. I know that's not easy for you to do or for many people to talk about. So I think that was really valuable, guys. Lots of lessons in this one for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Where can people find you?
So Connor Wanders, Connor with an E, Wanders with an A on Instagram, and then Pleasure Monkey Life on Instagram. And if you want to get involved with like these kind of discussions, I've created an online community. It's free to enter for the first 1,000 people. We're getting pretty close right now, but that's Pleasure Monkey Life on Facebook. So it's an online group, and we just share articles, books, little like podcasts, whatever we're feeling that's like really resonating with us. And it's a place to be authentically transparent and just share yourself. And people aren't really allowed to be irrational assholes in that group. So it's really fun. We have a great time in there, and that's kind of the holding place where all the new stuff comes out. They get first dibs and the retreats and things like that are coming up. So check that out if you're into it. Just request access and you're in.
Thanks for sharing. Yep. And thanks to CrossFit Active Performance here in Mission Viejo for letting us pop in and do the show. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to go to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, positive comment, and go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. See you next time.